Welcome to Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180 for the very absolute best in Saturday Talk Radio at 1 o'clock. And again on 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock Saturday. And for the best in Wednesday Talk Radio on 1410 KERI on Wednesday at 1 o'clock. And now on 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Your host is Clay Koerner, and I'm Marty Pay, and behind the big board is the producer's producer, Greg Held. Hey, Clay, we had a great show last week with Brad Dacus from the Pacific Justice Institute. He's going to be in town here at Hodell's Monday at 6 o'clock.
Yeah, I offered to buy dinner for those that want to come and can't afford it.
So does that mean you're going to cough up the $20 and buy me dinner on Monday night?
I said, well, I guess I will because you can't afford it.
And if Obamacare keeps on going the way it's going, neither one of us
can afford it.
We also had 16th Senatorial District candidate Andy Vitek on. He's a great candidate. We liked him when he ran for Congress, and we still like him now. So, but you were going to make a comment on that?
Well, I just think we need to balance out the California legislature a little bit, and so it's important to elect a non-Democrat.
A little bit?
A lot.
Yeah, with that supermajority, it's going to take a lot more than one seat, but you got to start someplace. But today we have another outstanding show. In the second half, we have our old friend Doug Johnson. But right now by phone, we have one of my favorite guests, author, lecturer, and the man who broke the Reverend Wright story, I can't believe it's been 5 years ago, Erik Rush. Erik, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Hi there. Thanks for having me on.
Has that been 5 years ago? 5 or 6, hasn't it?
I know. Isn't that freaky?
Yeah, it really is.
7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 6 years.
I hope the next...
2000, it was 2007.
I hope the next 3 go just as fast.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that this morning, and I was like, oh, man, another 3 years. It's sort of like, I'm swimming the English Channel or something. It's just, when will it be over?
Well, and I heard something last night that the prohibitive favorite for 2016 in either party is Hillary Clinton. So, I thought, oh my God, we're potentially looking at another 8 years. So, it's a little bleak looking forward. But going back 6 years, I want to start a little bit with that story.
Well, before you go on, you mentioned Hillary Clinton. And when they get the truth about Benghazi, Hillary Clinton may not stand a chance.
Well, we're going to talk about Benghazi a little bit because it was a great article that Erik posted. But before we go there, I just want to ask you about Reverend Wright. Why didn't that story stick with the American people? I mean, it's blatant what's out there, but it never really got the traction it should have gotten. How come?
Well, for a couple of reasons. One is because, in general, Americans, and particularly white Americans, I think, have been sort of conditioned to be more accepting of cultural eccentricities when it comes to black people, particularly given, the history of the slavery, segregation, activism. So, they're used to the sort of stereotypical fiery pastor, so people didn't necessarily make the same connection. The whole Marxist background, black liberation theology, all of that stuff that is integral to Wright's theology, if you want to call it that, really didn't sink in. And the other part of it, which is probably carries the lion's share of the blame, is that the press didn't, they didn't run with it. Obviously, they don't run with anything that has to do with, stuff that could harm Obama. Most of the people who heard about, he was a kind of a loudmouth, but they didn't really hear, they didn't hear the kinds of things that I was bringing to light and that Sean Hannity was bringing to light on a regular basis. They just thought he was, kind of the goofy old elder uncle type of a guy that you sort of don't pay attention to when he drinks too much on Thanksgiving or something of that nature, as opposed to being a really dangerous individual.
Well, you should give yourself some credit because you made this man extremely successful by bringing it to light.
Well, I'm sure he's gotten a bigger payoff than I have. I'll tell you that for nothing.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, you're right.
I've heard rumors to that extent.
Yeah. Yeah, that's sad. Well, I think I'm going to jump to your book for a second because that's a great segue. You know, your book, Negrophilia, From Slave Block and Pedestal, America's Racial Obsession. You know, there's that perception of the black community, and in your book you talk about that perception being wrong. Can you explain that?
Well, you know, the perception of black people by whites and actually by a lot of blacks has been crafted by the left. You know, in the years since the civil rights movement, blacks have been sort of conditioned to act the way the left wants them to, and that is pretty much controlled through, you know, the press and activism and the entertainment business, for example. You know, this entire thug culture didn't come out of the inner cities. It came out of the press, the media, that kind of thing. I mean, there's certain realities that exist in inner cities, but these have been leveraged and capitalized upon by the left in order to politically manipulate the greater population of black Americans. And that has also been done to manipulate the perception of white Americans, or should I say every other non-black American, when it comes to how black people think, what they want, how they act, all of this kind of thing. And when it really is, you know, the majority of black people, unless they're really politically indoctrinated as far as, you know, being dedicated leftists, which most of them are not, they just want the same thing that everybody else wants, and they don't, you know, think up, you know, the first thing on their mind when they wake up in the morning isn't race, and it wouldn't be at all for the most part these days if it weren't for people in their face, you know, like Al Sharpton and the other activist types and politicians who continue to keep race a front and center issue.
We're having a conversation with author, speaker, Erik Rush.
You know, Erik, I'm not really, I don't believe that the blacks just voted for Obama because he's black, because he really isn't black, for one reason. But I don't understand why they did.
Well, you know, that's a very interesting point that you make, because they voted for a lot of Democrats right down the line, and most of them have not been black. A lot of that has to do with, you know, there was a certain amount of sympathy, empathy, or what have you on the part of blacks and a lot of whites to, you know, give the brother a chance just because he was the first one. And so they voted for him. You know, the people who typically vote party line Democrat voted for him for the same reasons that they vote for a lot of Democrats, and those are the ideology that they think that Democrats hold, that Democrat politicians say they hold. But, you know, a lot of it had to do with the cult of Obama, which was crafted by, you know, media people and the left, which sold him as being this sort of a, you know, the centrist uniter who was kind of a sort of a brown Bill Clinton without the libido. And
well put.
And you know, they still regard, and it's what's amazing to me is that despite the uber left stuff that he has foisted upon us, the same people still have that same perception of him. During the 2012 election cycle, it was like, well, you know, he really hasn't had a chance to do what said he wanted to do, has he? Let's, you know, we've given a lot of guys 8 years. We might as well give him 8 years. And those are, you know, these are the people who have come to be known as the low information voters. And unfortunately, we've got a lot of them out there.
Well, you know, it's amazing, Erik. I look at our society since the Great Society. It hasn't worked. The programs haven't worked. They've actually made, you know, the situation for the minority community worse instead of better, and yet the media doesn't cover it. You know, it's sad.
Well, because ideologically they're kindred spirits, you know, with the people on the left. You know, when you go back and you look at the the stated goals of the Communist Party in America back in the 40s and 50s, and even before that, before it was codified, it was, they had a list, take over at least one of the political parties, infiltrate the media, infiltrate the schools, infiltrate the entertainment industry. I mean, key players in every area, and it has really been quite effective. People don't really know what they're getting in this country.
Totally successful.
Yeah, it's been totally successful. And I tell you what, I highly recommend that book, though. It's Negrophilia, From Slave Block and Pedestal, Americans' Racial Obsession. I highly, highly recommend it. When we come back from the break, let's talk about some current events. We'll be back in a moment on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio, News Talk 1180.